on the coming November. They are a total of 5 candidates, very young, very intelligent, and very courageous. No? They're the only ones, actually, that have addressed the present situation. They know exactly what is going on, and being part of the LaRouche movement, they have a collective effort to try to inform all of the United States about what is needed to save the nation, to save not just the United States, but in the process, saving the whole world from imminent thermonuclear war. But it has to be leaders like these young people who are going to be probably the next batch of leaders, hopefully, that will turn the whole situation around, so that all of us, the whole population of the world, will have a fighting chance. So, without much ado, first let me introduce to you our. She has already called here before, but now we're very much into the campaign for the for Congress. She's running for New Jersey's 5th district, and we have none other than Diane Sayari. Diane, good evening here and good morning there.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, now you're coming in clear.
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
Okay, then. First of all, Diane, I watched the highlights of your debate with your coming opponent, Jason Castle.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
And I have to congratulate you, because that debate was not a debate, right? Because you were giving all of the substantial statements and ideas, and then I suppose he was so overwhelmed he just didn't know what to say, and it was like a comedy for them to even call it a debate. But let me I just gave a very brief introduction about you, but maybe you should do it yourself and explain what you and Keisha and the rest are doing now.
Sure.
And what the whole objective is.
Sure. Well, I can tell you it's really a battle right now, and there are Democratic Party primaries for myself and Keisha. They are very soon. Keisha's primary election is May 29th. Mm-hmm. So it's just a little over 2 weeks, and mine is June 5th, so it's just a little over 3 weeks.
Right.
And, you have the backdrop of the total breakdown of the transatlantic financial system. Greece has been unable to form a government. I guess they're going to have new elections. You had the situation in France where our candidate, Jacques Cheminade, completely transformed all of Europe by discussing the collapse, that he was right in 1995 and everyone else was wrong. Mm-hmm. And he forced the issue to the table that this Euro system, all these bailouts, are a complete disaster. So Sarkozy was defeated there. So what you see, in a sense, is a real revolt against this British Empire monetarist system. Mm-hmm. And their response is to use their puppet in the United States, Barack Obama, who is a failed, he really has personality, he's a crazy person. He's been diagnosed as a malignant narcissist. So he has a mentality like Nero, mm-hmm. and he has now put us in an extremely dangerous confrontation with Russia. Mm-hmm. And it's not simply over Iran and North Korea and Syria, which are a few of the pretexts, but now it's head-on, because he and NATO have refused to negotiate about putting these anti-ballistic missile systems in Poland, Estonia, in Eastern Europe, and they are refusing. They claim, oh no, this is not directed at Russia. Of course, they're all around Russia's border, but we're saying it's not directed at Russia. And the Russians have asked, okay, if it's not directed at us, could you give us something in writing? We would like a treaty agreement. We would like a written statement that these will not be used against Russia. No such written statement is forthcoming. So the chief of the Russian Armed Forces, Makarov, actually on May 3rd at the Moscow Security Conference said, if NATO proceeds in this way, we will be forced to use preemptive strikes to knock out these bases. So we are really on a hair trigger. And then over here in the U.S., people were saying, oh, the Russians, they're just bluffing. They would never do anything. And then Putin, to underscore it, canceled his meeting with Obama. He was supposed to be coming over here for the G8 meeting at Camp David, May 18th and 19th. Putin canceled his visit. And this came as a total shock to the White House, and instead he's sending Medvedev, who's the prime minister now. And to make it clear, I mean, Putin said the reason he couldn't come is he's just elected and he's forming the government. Well, the prime minister is the one who forms the government. So,
right.
you know.
Yeah. So, in effect, he snubbed Obama.
Yes. Yeah. And it's really to put a fine point because May 20th is the NATO conference. So these things are going to be discussed and decided May 20th. And Obama is saying, no, just wait till after November. Well, that's too late.
Yeah. So, no, we were just as an aside, when you were mentioning about the mental state of your president,
yes.
A couple of guys here in front of me were looking, wondering whether that condition is contagious. Because we have some people have similar apprehensions about the mental state of our leaders.
Yes.
At any rate, going back to this, so you've got a narcissistic president who seems to be doing everything that he can to make the whole world very unstable politically, and probably to the brink of a thermonuclear war. Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah. And in terms of the economic situation, there is nothing that he has done to address the situation with the intention of fixing it.
No, exactly. There was a study that just came out of Rutgers University here in New Jersey that only, I think, 49% of college graduates are able to find work, and 85% of them are moving back in with their parents.
Sounds like the Philippines.
Yeah.
Welcome to the third world.
Exactly. No, and this is why our campaigns are so unique, and we're getting such a very, very receptive response. I mean, if you saw my so-called debate with Jason Castle, I mean, this was really something because it was sponsored by a group of what you would consider liberal Democrats, people who have frankly spent 30 years because, you know, Lyndon LaRouche has had a big presence in the New York metropolitan area for a long time.
Right.
And these are people who've spent years spreading the lies and slanders about LaRouche being an extremist and anti-Semitic and blah, 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 communist, whatever. They have not been supporters of our movement. So what happened in the meeting was that they were really won over by what I was saying, because it is the reality that people are experiencing, the economic collapse, these war upon war. A lot of them were aware of Obama signing this NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, which says that U.S. citizens can be detained and held indefinitely without trial in the United States. I mean, this is real Hitler stuff.
Right.
So the thing that I found very pleasantly surprising is that people were very responsive to what I was saying, and in fact it was so extreme that one newspaper reporter who is an Obama supporter and was quite unhappy with what I said, she reported that it was rough on Jason Castle because he was addressing a hostile audience. But it wasn't a hostile audience. When we began, they were probably much more on his side than they were on my side.
That's right. And your demeanor was there. You're sitting very ladylike, almost timid, as a matter of fact, except, of course, when you started to explain what needs to be done. Right?
Well, that's what they said about me that's so dangerous. One of the... they said that I'm dangerous because I look like a soccer mom and I'm very pleasant, but then I say these terrible things.
Oh, well, I enjoin all of the listeners to take a look at our at LaRouche Park. I think they'll be able to check into that and maybe find the way of getting to the video of that debate that you've had. And I'm sure, but there are other conferences that you've attended and spoke to that are also there in the LaRouche Park, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, there's many things. Just on this question, I did also want to say something about what's happening with Keisha Rogers, because it really underscores how much the British Empire is really hysterical about what we are doing, because we're at a moment like 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down, where we really could win the fight for a new monetary system for these great projects such as NWAPA here in the United States. I mean, the Eurasian Land Bridge, we really could win this right now. So in the case of Keisha, where she did win the Democratic primary in 2010,
wait, excuse me, just for the sake of our listeners, Keisha Rogers is running for Congress in the state, the 22nd District of Texas. So, and you're running for Congress in the 5th District of New Jersey.
Correct.
And then we have Rachel Brown, who's running in the 4th District of Massachusetts. And Bill Roberts, who's running in the 11th District of Michigan, and Dave Christie, who's running in the 9th District of Washington, right? So I just wanted that out so that our listeners, and I understand since we're hooked up with our network also that's based in New York, and I'm sure there are lots of Filipinos that might be listening. And I want them to know that this is a team. You are a team of 5 young future leaders of the United States of America, and you're coming in with this very strong program. So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt that thing.
Okay, so what is happening in the case of Keisha Rogers is that you have a little core group, the Fort Hood, or what is it called? Fort Bend Democrats. We keep calling it Skunk Hollow. So, who are Obama must be paying them or something, and they have launched an extremely vicious campaign. They had 2 candidates other than Keisha. They forced one to drop out because they don't want to split the vote against Keisha. And they have this poor guy who really has no program, and he is running around. His only mission is to stop Keisha Rogers from getting elected. And, of course, Texas is the home of the Johnson Space Center of NASA. There's a very proud legacy there of American science, American industry, which has all been shut down and attacked by the Obama administration. And you also have a lot of military personnel down there who reported that when the election season really got hot, that Obama was going to deploy very aggressively against our movement, against our effect, because we are the biggest threat to his ability to ram through these dictatorial policies. So it really is crazy. And this guy who's running against her, I looked him up. You can get, the Federal Election Commission reports are public. So you can see what's happening with people's fundraising, how many contributors they have, if they have any support at all. I think he's raised something like $20,000, accepting $18,000 of it as a loan. I mean, you know, he actually has no support. And it's similar here. I looked up my two opponents. One of them does not even have a campaign committee or a website. But he's on the ballot. And the other one, Jason, who you saw, similarly, I think out of the 12,000 or something he had raised on the first report, 8,000 or 9,000 was a loan.
Oh, boy. Now, what about... we know we've heard Keisha at one time had already called us as well, Diane. But what about, you know, when they get into the ballot, is there any cheating going on in elections in the United States? There is a, you know, we're so familiar with different ways of cheating here. And I hope our experts here are not sent to the United States to teach Obama how to do it, right?
Well, I'm sorry to say we also have that problem here. And it wouldn't surprise me if we had problems like that in this election. We definitely do. Although, I'll tell you, maybe you saw what happened in West Virginia, where a guy sitting in jail who was on the ballot with Obama in the Democratic primary, the guy in jail got 40% of the vote.
Oh.
He won in 10 different counties in West Virginia against Obama. And people that they interviewed afterwards said, I don't care, I didn't know who he was, I just wanted to vote against Obama.
And he got 40% of the vote.
He got 40% of the vote.
Just on the negative impact of Obama. And I'll vote for my neighbor's dog just to get rid of Obama.
Yeah, exactly. Now one thing I do want to bring up, which is a very important, I mean, because the question that people are asking, of course, is how do you solve this? What do you do? And clearly what you see from both Obama and Mitt Romney, who really is nothing different, is that they are prepared to continue the same policy which has not worked, which is printing trillions of dollars, trying to bail out gambling debts, and we're really at the end of the line on this. We have now, and I'm sure you're experiencing it in the Philippines, with hyperinflation of the price of food, of basic commodities like rice. You know, here it's wheat, out of control on the prices, and people simply cannot live. So what we have been saying, and this is what Jacques Cheminade brought up in France, is that we have to return to the bank regulation of Franklin Roosevelt, namely the Glass-Steagall Act, the separation of the commercial banks from the speculators, so that the American people are not forced to bail out all of this crazy gambling garbage. And if Glass-Steagall were reinstated, it would wipe out Wall Street. It would wipe out Wall Street. It would wipe out London. And that's not a bad thing. You know, if we had an FDR or Hamiltonian banking system, we could take care of these people. We won't let them starve to death. But we don't need them sucking the blood out of every city, every state. I'm sure you've heard some of the situation here. There are cities in New Jersey, like Newark, where they had to fire 1/3 of the police department, and the homicide rate is up by 70%.
Wow.
All right, so you have the country disintegrating. We also have, because our planet and our solar system is going through a certain cycle, but we're having all over the planet what people are calling extreme weather, and we don't have the infrastructure to deal with this. So you have floods. Part of my district here in New Jersey was flooded out like crazy. I mean, thousands of homes were destroyed permanently. But what made it worse for some people is we've had 5 major floods in the last 6 years. So some people have had their house flooded over and over, and it's $30,000, $50,000 each time, and they're just saying, we can't live here anymore.
Right.
We can't live like this. And this is why, when you look at this NWAPA project, the North American Water and Power Alliance, and I like to think of it as being something which will inspire the whole world, like when we built the Transcontinental Railroad, where you take water from Alaska down into, the Idaho, the Rocky Mountain Trench, and then you're talking about irrigating the entire dry western part of the United States. It would double the amount of farmland that we have available, and it would put 4 million people to work. And unfortunately, right now, some of the people we're talking to are wondering if the United States even has enough skilled workers to launch such a thing.
In other words,
we might have to increase immigration.
That's right. Yeah. Well, no, if that ever happens, we won't be able to send our people there because they'll be doing the same thing here.
Exactly.
Well, we do hope that, of course, these projects that the LaRouche movement is pushing through will come to fore. Except that the situation seems to be very critical at this point because of President Obama. I understand that nothing is going to be done nothing can move unless Obama is taken out of office. Now, how is this going to be done?
Well, that's a very good question. I think the how is when people get it in their gut that there's no point. First of all, the showdown with Russia is coming up at the end of May. I mean, May 20th is the NATO conference, and I think people Americans have no idea how much danger we're in. They're just oblivious to it, and if you talk to them, they know, they have they said, oh yeah, I heard Obama off mic saying wait until the elections. And to show you how crazy some of these so-called conservative Republicans are in the Congress, they're using that to say, oh, you see, Obama's too soft, he's willing to negotiate with the Russians. I mean, talk about insane. So you have insanity from all sides. On the other hand, this West Virginia vote does indicate the unbelievable hatred for Obama's destruction of the country. And I think if enough people had an idea that it's really life and death, that the November elections will solve absolutely nothing. There is nothing, for example, that Mitt Romney has said that in any way disagrees with the most devastating of Obama's policies. He's exactly the same. And furthermore, we may not live till November if this is not addressed. And I think when people get that, then who knows what would happen. I think one of the clearest cases is because Obama literally is insane and dysfunctional. And I'll tell you, we've been organizing in Washington, getting out literature near the executive office building, and the other day one person came up and said, I agree Obama's very bad, but what's worse is I think he's crazy. And this is someone in Washington who would know. So if it's made clear that it's life and death, he could be removed under Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, that he literally is dysfunctional, is not handling the job. And I think we have to get there. And I'll just say, as you probably know, we did have this Congressman Walter Jones, Republican from North Carolina, on the LaRouche radio show yesterday. And what I was really struck about is, you say, why is he so courageous? Why is he the first congressman to be interviewed on the LaRouche website like this? And when you hear him, you realize that what he is passionate about is the young men and women who have been killed and maimed in these wars. That this is on his conscience, that he keeps saying the Congress is not doing its job. It's the Congress's responsibility to declare war. We cannot allow these young people to lose their legs, lose their lives in colonial illegal wars. And because he is so personally connected to that reality, then he acts in a courageous manner.
Right. So,
and somehow I think that's the point we have to get to.
Yeah. Well, earlier, before we were connected, we had an interview here with another congressman, and it was like a gleam of hope that indeed we were able to single out one congressman who's willing to stand up for what is right. So I suppose somewhere when their conscience hits them, and they feel also that they've got some support, which adds to their courage, then they will move on, and that's what we need to do, have a collective effort towards this. We have a question from Ver, who's with the LaRouche movement here.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, Diane.
Hi.
Well, what makes your campaign and other LaRouche Democrat, slate unique? So unique that by pushing these three important programs, the NAWAPA, Glass-Steagall, and the national banking system will rescue the USA from its present state. Could you elaborate what are these programs, or perhaps the national banking system, since you mentioned about the NAWAPA and Glass-Steagall, so that our country, and our leaders can learn from it?
Yes, I'm really glad you brought that up. The national banking and credit system is probably the toughest idea to get across to Americans, and I'm afraid now most people in the world, because people have become obsessed with money, and they think that money has value, and there's nothing that can get people whipped up into a rage more quickly than someone took money or someone has their money. It's a very bad thing, because of course if you have no food, no water, and no energy, you can have all the money in the world. It's really not going to help you that much. And what Alexander Hamilton did, which was really brilliant, because, and actually it started earlier with the Massachusetts Bay Colony in the 1630s here, where people had to come up with a currency, the famous pine tree shilling. But the idea was that it's a form of credit, that what this currency or this money represents is a conception of where you are going to be at some future point. Imagine we were sort of a ragtag army of all different groups. We exhausted all of our resources. We borrowed money from European friends, and this little new republic had $42 million of debt, and in 1783 that was a really huge amount of money. And what Hamilton did was he said the federal government should absorb all of this, and he had arguments with a lot of people, including Jefferson, on that point. But it was brilliant, because even after we defeated the British, they didn't leave. They were still here, and they were trying to pit the states against each other, and some states had a lot of debt and some states had no debt. So it was a really good way to get people fighting. And so Hamilton brilliantly said, no, we're going to consolidate the debt, and in fact, we're going to issue another $10 million of new debt, because we have to invest in building the nation. We're going to build canals, we're going to build roads, and we're going to have industry. And by making this investment in what you could call internal improvements in science driver programs, you get enough of a rate of return that he was able to convert this massive debt into kind of a bond issue. We were able to repay the entire amount, including the $10 million, and to quickly become the most productive nation on the planet. And you think about these silly people who say we have to have a balanced budget amendment, or we have to get rid of all debt. No, it's a question of what is it credit? Is it a debt for future development, which pays for itself many times over in terms of the productivity and creativity of the population? Or, of course, what we've been doing is not credit, it's straight debt. I think it's $29 trillion now that has been spent on these bailouts.
Imagine, $29 trillion to bail out these commercial banks. But nothing goes into the real economy. I was just also thinking, I'm thinking for our listeners here, Diane. I am going to make a call and together with you to get our Filipinos here to contact their relatives all over the United States, in your case in New Jersey. And we have one actually here from New Jersey. I'm not so sure that they're from the 22nd district, but
5th district.
5th district.
They might be. There's the Bergenfield, which is in my district, has a very, very large Filipino-American community.
Is that where you? Okay, that's where his mother and his parents are there.
Oh, good.
Okay, so you've got the group there already.
Great.
But where you are going to be coming up with a program for the United States, but there is, as we know, an impact on the rest of the world, and I would like to you to explain this as well. And the programs that you're going to be implementing, how will it benefit countries like the Philippines and the rest of the world?
Well, obviously, first of all, if the United States stands for justice, as people who are old enough to remember President Kennedy or others, what happens is, first of all, injustice around the world is dealt a terrible blow. Because there is a standard for nations and for relationships between nations. Also, as you know, NWAPA really originates in Alaska, which then raises the question of our relationship to Russia. And Putin has been proposing this Bering Strait tunnel for some time. He wants to collaborate on the development of Siberia. This would shift the U.S. orientation away from London toward Asia. And I will tell you, I don't know every detail about the situation right now with between China and the Philippines, but I have a very strong suspicion that the fact that Obama is president of the United States right now has much more to do with this than almost anything, because the British game is always divide and conquer. And nobody, unless they're really insane, wants to be in a war. No one wants their children to grow up in war. You want your children to grow up and become geniuses, which you can't do in a war zone. So you always have to look behind on these things. So if you also, you take this question of the strategic defense of Earth, where one big threat, if we survive, not getting into a thermonuclear war, is you do have a lot of very large asteroids now that have been coming into near-Earth orbit, like this one last November, which passed between the Moon and Earth.
Right.
You had this meteor, which did come through the atmosphere in California, and it mostly broke up into, very small little pieces, but it released a shock in the atmosphere. I think they said it was 1/3 as big as a nuclear bomb.
Wow.
I mean, you could feel the houses shake when this thing came through, so thank God it wasn't large enough to land, So imagine the world saying, you know what, maybe we should be working together because we could be hit by a large asteroid which would end all life on this planet. And we should develop our scientific capabilities to put an industrial base on the moon, figure out how to get to Mars. And then I think you'd have a very different attitude, because you'd be wanting to find the very best scientists in every country. You would value the differences of culture, because people could give you insights that you didn't have within your own language culture. I just think we really could have a phenomenal collaboration if the United States would take the lead again in these kind of scientific breakthroughs. And there's many projects all over the world, which I think as soon as transformed. Africa would be transformed, because people would say, my gosh, if we can manage water, why are we starving to death?
That's right. That's right. Yes. And when you were referring to, did you mention that that I think you mentioned that Putin was interested very much in setting up the connection in the Bering Strait. You're talking of the tunnel that was suggested a long time ago to connect Alaska to Siberia, and that would complete the land bridge all over the world.
Right.
Now these are major infrastructure projects together with the NAWAPA, which would, I suppose, inspire countries like us to do the same, especially in a financial system that would have been changed dramatically to focus on the development of the physical economies of all populations. And we do hope that you push maybe what you're doing maybe been pushed harder, because the fate of the world is in your hands. It's just as simple as that, Diane. You five young leaders, as of now, I suppose, you're probably the only hope, not of the fatherland, but of the whole world, because you're the ones that are saying exactly what is needed, not just for yourselves, but for the whole population. And we are grateful that you are moving it. And I want all of our Filipinos here and the Filipino Americans there who are now listening to realize the importance and the impact of that support that they may be able to give you and the rest of your colleagues who are running as well, because this would save them, this would save us, and this would save the world. It's just as simple as that. And as you mentioned, that the situation is, you're saying that you might not even reach November, considering the present geopolitical situation, the provocation that Obama is doing every day against those who want to make peace, and where will it lead to, except a crazy war. Now, I just wanted to again mention to our listeners all of these other five who are running with you. You've got Keisha Rogers, who is running in Texas on the 22nd district, and you have. Let me see. Could you help me?
Yeah, sure. Bill Roberts, who is in Michigan in the 11th district.
Michigan. Okay.
Michigan. Yeah.
Okay.
The heartland, the old industrial heartland.
Right.
Dave Christie, who's in the Seattle, Washington area. That's the 9th Congressional District in Washington.
Okay.
And Rachel Brown, who is running in the 4th Congressional District of Massachusetts. And, of course, I'm in the 5th Congressional District in New Jersey.
New Jersey. And we have a pretty big Filipino group, and Filipinos like politics, right? And
excellent. That's a very good quality.
Yes, at this point it is. Right? And we hope that they do get involved, and we will continue to mention this up to election time, Diane. So I'll give you now your last minute and a half, 2 minutes. Take it in order to address your constituents who might be listening now and understand that they might be tuned into the internet, and also to the Filipino people.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think the main thing is for people to understand is that the five of us represent not individual congressional races, but as you said, first of all, international policy really can only be changed from a change in the United States. And when Mr. LaRouche asked us to run, he said, we have a crisis of leadership. We have no presidency. And his instruction to us was to conduct our campaigns from the standpoint of presidential policy. He said that anyone running for federal office should have the president's baton in their knapsack, that we are responsible each to think of what the nation of the United States should be doing as a nation. And I'm happy to say that when we get into the Congress, we will have collaborators like Walter Jones and some others. Senator, I guess Jim Webb is outgoing now, but leaders who have shown some courage, and that's the way we can make the change, although the change we have to make is absolutely immediate. So in a sense, we are not yet in office, but we are providing leadership for the nation from the standpoint of being candidates for federal office with a presidential policy.
Okay. Yeah, well, again, Diane, I'm sure, it's still a few months before election. We'd like to...
Well, my primary, just let me be very clear, if there are people who are listening in New Jersey, is June 5th.
June 5th.
So,
okay.
June the 5th, it's only 3 weeks away, Tuesday, June 5th, in the Democratic primary.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sure all of our listeners got that, and we enjoin, of course, our Filipino listeners here to call their relatives in New Jersey and all of the states that have been mentioned to support the LaRouche candidates for Congress, if they want to save the world. So thank you again, Diane, and hope this is not the last time we're going to hear from you.
Yes.
And if you need us again, please, and we'd welcome any call from you again in any of our programs before the election.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
God bless.